What do you do when the child you prayed for becomes the reason you lose everything? That question haunted Adana every night as she stared up at the cracked ceiling of an abandoned warehouse on the edge of the city. Her daughter Nia curled beside her, fast asleep, unaware of the storm that had ripped their world apart. But this story didn't begin in the shadows of hardship. It began with love. Years earlier, in a lively, crowded town pulsing with music and marketplaces, Adana and her husband Malik were known as the perfect couple. Their love was loud, visible, and envied. He was a charismatic furniture maker, known for sculpting intricate beauty out of raw wood. She was soft-spoken and elegant, a seamstress whose hands brought grace to cloth. Together, they were admired not just for what they did, but for how deeply they loved each other. For 8 long years, they tried to have a child. 8 years of empty cribs and hospital visits. 8 years of whispered prayers behind locked doors. When Adana finally conceived, Malik wept openly. He kissed her stomach every night, sang lullabies into her belly, and told anyone who would listen that he was going to be the best father the world had ever seen. When their baby girl was born, they named her Nia, purpose, because she was their answer. But life has a strange way of answering prayers. From the moment Nia was born, there was an unsettling stillness about her. She didn't cry at birth. The midwife panicked, tapping her feet and blowing air into her mouth. Eventually she exhaled, but no scream ever came. Her lungs worked fine, her heart beat strong, but Nia never made a sound. At first, Malik said she was just a calm child, an angel. But by her first birthday, the truth began to suffocate their joy. Nia was mute. Doctors couldn't explain it. No trauma, no deformity, no genetic reason, just silence. Malik spiraled. He started avoiding home, staying longer at his workshop. When he did come home, he was irritable, cold, distracted. He no longer kissed Adana's stomach or whispered to Nia at night. He barely looked at them. Adana tried everything to save their bond, made his favorite meals, initiated conversations, begged him to talk. But every attempt felt like throwing love into a void. One night, after another failed appointment with a specialist, Malik exploded. "This is on you," he hissed, his voice low and venomous. "You carried her. Whatever happened to her, it happened inside you." Adana staggered back as if slapped. "She's still our daughter," she whispered, her voice shaking. "No, she's your mistake," Malik said, eyes dark. "And now she's my punishment." That night marked the death of the man Adana once loved. Malik began to disappear for days at a time. Rumors reached Adana's ears that he was seeing another woman, a younger woman, one who could give him a normal child. Then on a cold, rainy evening, he came home drunk and wild-eyed. He threw her suitcase on the floor and pointed at the door. "You and your cursed child out." Adana stood frozen, holding Nia in her arms, rain soaking into her slippers as the man who once vowed forever banished them into the night. The streets were merciless. Adana knocked on old doors, distant relatives, forgotten friends, but was met with pity or indifference. With a mute child and no savings, no one wanted the burden. Days turned into nights. Nights turned into desperation. Eventually, she found an abandoned warehouse on the edge of a construction site. It had no doors, no warmth, but it was shelter. There, on a torn blanket and with Nia nestled into her chest, she started a new life from ashes. She begged for food, collected discarded fabric to sew handkerchiefs and aprons. And through it all, Nia smiled. She never spoke, but her eyes said everything. "I'm okay, Mama." Adana often wondered where her daughter got that strength from. As years passed, Nia grew into a graceful, intelligent girl. She learned to express herself with her hands. Her silence became her language, and her face, open, sincere, emotive, spoke louder than words ever could. By the time Nia turned 15, she had become a quiet symbol of resilience in the area. Street vendors gave her fruit for free. Mechanics waved when she passed. She helped sweep stalls and deliver small packages in exchange for bread or coins. Despite their poverty, there was dignity in how they lived. But just when things began to settle, the warehouse was marked for demolition. Adana and Nia were thrown back onto the streets once again, older, tired, but not broken. Not yet. They arrived in a nearby city 2 days later, dusty and hungry. Adana had one name in her mind, Amara, her childhood friend, now married and said to be doing well. But Amara didn't answer her phone, or her door, or any of Adana's texts. For 2 nights they slept in a park. On the 3rd, they found another unfinished building and crawled in. It was cold. The wind hissed through the broken windows. That night, Adana stared at her daughter, wondering how they had gotten here again. She felt rage, not at Nia, but at life. And Malik, he had erased them as if they never existed. And she had no way to prove they ever mattered to him. But fate was not done with them yet. In a corner restaurant the next morning, an older man sat eating alone. He was known in the city as Mr. Remy, wealthy, widowed, childless, feared by his rivals, respected by the city. He hated noise, hated children. But that morning, as he chewed his boiled yam, he looked up and saw a teenage girl quietly moving from table to table. She made no sound, just raised her hands in a pleading gesture. Everyone ignored her. Remy scowled. "She'll bring flies into my soup," he muttered. But then Nia reached his table, and something in her eyes froze him. There was no begging in them, just quiet. Dignity. He stared. She pointed at a half-eaten roll on the next table. He could tell she hadn't eaten in days. "Sit," he said gruffly. She sat. He ordered her food. She ate in silence, slowly, savoring every bite. Remy couldn't stop staring. He finally asked, "Where's your mother?" Nia didn't speak. She just motioned toward the street, gesturing with her fingers in what looked like sign language. Intrigued, Remy stood. "Take me." She led him through alleys and underpasses until they reached the crumbling building. Adana, startled, jumped up. Remy looked at her, then at the broken cot, the threadbare blanket, the empty tin cans they used for bowls. And for the first time in years, something inside him cracked. He didn't ask questions. He simply said, "You shouldn't be living here." Remy didn't sleep that night, after dropping off Adana and Nia at one of his unused bungalows on the quiet side of town. Clean, modest but fully furnished, he found himself pacing his lavish home, disturbed by the unexpected feeling that had clung to him all day. He hadn't felt anything for anyone in years, not since he buried his wife and walked out of the funeral without shedding a tear. But the look in that girl's eyes, it haunted him. He sent his driver the next morning with breakfast for them, then lunch, then groceries. Then, without asking, he called his property manager and ordered the electricity and water restored. 2 days later, Adana called him on the landline in the house. Her voice was low, cautious. "Mr. Remy, we're grateful, but we don't want to overstay our welcome. We'll leave as soon as we find somewhere else." "You'll leave when I say so," he said calmly. "Not a day sooner." And he hung up. Over the next few weeks, Remy visited them occasionally, always with something in hand, blankets, a radio, a fan. He began asking about Nia's drawings, which were pinned to the wall in their living room. They were stunning, silent like her. "She draws what she feels," Adana explained. "She's been doing it since she was 4. One evening, after dropping off some groceries, Remy turned at the door. "Does she know how to cook?" Adana blinked. "Yes, she's brilliant. She cooks better than I do. I need someone in my kitchen. My house girl ran off with my driver last month. Would she be willing to cook for me?" Adana hesitated. "She's only 16. I'll pay her." "Not a favor, a job." When she told Nia, the girl lit up, nodding quickly, hands fluttering with excitement. She hugged her mother tightly. For the first time in a long time, Adana saw something she hadn't seen in Nia's eyes since before Malik ruined everything. Hope. Nia's food changed something in Remy. She started with simple things, soup, fried plantain, rice. But every dish came with something extra, heart. Her movements in the kitchen were soft, precise, graceful. Her hands danced, and though she never spoke, her presence filled his mansion like music. Remy, once cold and gruff, began to soften. He started staying home more, reading again, smiling. "She's the daughter I never had," he said aloud one night, staring at a sketch Nia had drawn of him sitting on his porch. But not everyone was pleased. Somewhere across the city, news reached a man named Sadiq, Remy's estranged nephew, a known gambler, always in debt, bitter, entitled. He had always assumed that when Remy died, Everything would fall into his lap, the lands, the businesses, the cars. But now people were whispering that Remy was spending time with a mute girl from the streets, that she cooked for him, that he had taken her and her mother in, that he was treating her like family. Sadiq's mind darkened with suspicion and rage. That little witch, that mute thing. Was she about to steal what was rightfully his? He needed a plan, a way to push her out of Remy's life, or better, out of life entirely. A week later, Remy called his lawyer. "Draft a new will," he said. "Leave my mansion to Naya, my company to her as well. She'll manage it one day. She's the only one I trust." "Are you sure?" the lawyer asked carefully. "What about Sadiq?" "I've given that fool more chances than he deserves. He has nothing to offer the world but excuses." The papers were signed in secret, and that was the moment the fuse was lit. Sadiq found out within days. One of the housemaids, paid handsomely by him for gossip, sent him a blurry photo of the will draft on the lawyer's table. He exploded. All this for a street girl? He waited, watched, plotted, until one morning, as Nia shopped at the market for ingredients, he approached her in disguise. She didn't recognize him, of course. He wore a long kaftan and shaded glasses. He tapped her shoulder. "Chief Remy needs you urgently," he said. She looked confused, gestured that she couldn't speak. He handed her a note with scribbled words. "Driver sent by Remy, follow." She followed him to a waiting van. What happened next would become a citywide scandal. Nia never made it home that night. Remy panicked. Police were called. Adana couldn't sleep. They searched everywhere. The next morning, the police received an anonymous call. There was a body in Remy's house. It wasn't Nia. It was Remy. He had been poisoned. The city exploded with gossip. A girl from the streets, his sudden death. And just like that, fingers pointed at Nia. She was found 12 hours later, tied up and abandoned in a slum. When the police found her, she was bruised, hungry, terrified, and worst of all, silent. She couldn't speak to explain anything. The perfect scapegoat. Sadiq made his next move quickly. He went to Remy's lawyer, pretending to grieve. "I want to see the will," he said. The lawyer nodded. "Of course, but the contents might upset you." Sadiq leaned forward, feigning patience. When he saw the truth, that Remy had left everything to Nia, his breath caught. But he composed himself. He smiled. She killed him for it. Arrest her. Block the transfer. And so the lawyer froze the inheritance. The court began proceedings, and Nia, who could not defend herself, was named the prime suspect in Remy's death. Adana broke when she heard the news. Her child, her beautiful, quiet, gentle Nia, was now in prison, accused of killing the only man who had shown them kindness. And the evidence? Remy's last meal, the soup Nia had cooked. The CCTV camera in Remy's house, disabled the day before. No one believed in her innocence, and no one believed her mother. They were nobodies again. But the truth was about to claw its way to the surface, because secrets don't stay buried forever, and justice, though often silent, eventually finds its voice. The courtroom was ice cold, not because of the air conditioning, but because of the stares. They looked at Nia like a monster, a manipulative girl who had earned a rich man's trust, only to poison him for his wealth. And worst of all, she said nothing, because she couldn't. The silence that once made her special now sealed her fate. Her court-appointed lawyer tried, but he wasn't skilled, just overworked and indifferent. His defense lacked urgency, and he treated the case like another box to tick. As Nia sat there, shackled and terrified, the judge and jury misread her silence as guilt. The accused prepared the last meal the deceased ate, the prosecutor thundered. She was alone with him. She had motive. She had access. And no alibi. Why? Because she doesn't speak? Let us not be fooled. Adana sat in the gallery, eyes hollow, hands trembling in her lap. She wanted to scream, but no words came. No one was on their side. The world had once again decided they were disposable. And then came Sadiq, the cousin, the grieving family member, dressed in black, wearing a face of well-rehearsed sadness. "I loved Uncle Remy like a father," he told the court. But after he took in that girl and her mother, he changed. He trusted too easily. "I warned him." He turned to the jury and added, "This girl She may look innocent, but so did the serpent in the Garden of Eden. Gasps filled the courtroom. Sadiq smiled inwardly. That night, Adana sat on the edge of her mattress in a temporary shelter provided by a sympathetic volunteer from the courthouse. She couldn't eat, couldn't think, couldn't sleep. How had it come to this? She had escaped Malik's cruelty, survived homelessness, rebuilt hope, and now Nia was being crushed by a lie. A knock at the door broke her thoughts. She opened it to see a woman she hadn't seen in nearly a decade. Lena, Sadiq's ex-wife. She looked shaken, older but determined. "We need to talk," she said. Over lukewarm tea, Lena confessed everything. "I left Sadiq because of what I heard," she whispered. "The day after Remy died, he got drunk and called someone. I overheard the entire thing." She opened her bag and pulled out an old voice recorder. "I was scared, so I recorded it." Adana's hands trembled as she hit play. There was Sadiq's unmistakable voice. Disconnected the cameras, slipped the poison in the yam sauce. That old fool never saw it coming. Adana nearly dropped the recorder. "I didn't come forward because I was scared for my kids," Lena said. "But I heard what happened to Nia. I can't live with the guilt." Adana was already grabbing her scarf. "We're going to the police now." The officer on duty barely looked up when Adana arrived, breathless, voice shaky. But once he heard the recording, his posture changed. Within an hour, detectives were on the move. By dawn, Sadiq had been arrested. The trial resumed with explosive evidence. The recording, Lena's testimony, forensic analysis of Remy's wine glass showing fingerprints that matched Sadiq. And finally, the court saw the real villain. But it was over. The judge's gavel dropped with a heavy bang. Nia is hereby declared innocent of all charges. This court deeply regrets the miscarriage of justice. The courtroom was full, not just of people, but of tension. After Lena's confession and the explosive audio recording were revealed, the trial had shifted into high drama. Media outlets swarmed. Cameras clicked. Courtroom sketches littered the news. But it wasn't over yet. The judge ordered a full retrial, not just to exonerate Nia, but to bring justice down on Sadiq, whose smug face had quickly dissolved into one of pure panic. Sadiq tried to deny the voice on the recorder, then begged, then wept. "It's fabricated," he shouted. "I've never said those things." But the forensic audio expert testified, there is no manipulation. The voice is consistent with prior verified recordings of the defendant. Sadiq shifted in his seat, sweat dripping down his temple. Then came Lena, sitting in the witness box, hands folded, her voice calm but firm. "For years I feared him. I watched him lie, cheat, destroy everything he touched. But I stayed silent. Until now." Sadiq's eyes darted toward her like daggers. "He said she was mute," Lena continued, pointing at Nia, "so it would be easy. He thought no one would believe her even if she saw him. That's what he counted on." Adana took the stand next. And though her voice trembled, her presence silenced the room. She described the night they were kicked out, the uncompleted buildings, the quiet dignity Nia carried despite hunger and rejection, the kindness of Remy, and the betrayal that followed. "She couldn't speak," Adana said, her voice cracking. But she felt. She smiled. She loved. And when he died, it broke something in her that none of you can see. She turned, eyes locked on the jury. "You say she didn't defend herself, but she was never allowed to. This system never gave her the voice to do it." Even the prosecutor lowered his head. Nia, seated beside her new lawyer, watched every second with wide eyes. She still spoke little, even though her voice had returned. She chose silence now, and it was louder than ever. Then came the twist. Sadiq's attorney backed into a corner, threw one last card on the table. He claimed Sadiq wasn't acting alone. "That recording, my client was bragging, yes, but under pressure. There was someone else involved." Whispers erupted. "A financier. Someone who stood to gain from Chief Remy's death," he insisted. The judge leaned forward. "Do you have proof?" The defense hesitated. "No, but we demand an investigation." The judge narrowed his eyes. "Then sit down." The jury returned with their verdict by the following week. Sadiq was found guilty of conspiracy, murder, obstruction of justice, and tampering with evidence. The judge didn't hesitate. Life imprisonment. No possibility of parole for 35 years. And just like that, Sadiq's world, the one built on lies, jealousy, and greed, crumbled in full view of the nation. But in the darkness, he made a vow. "I'll get out," he whispered as the guards cuffed him. "And when I do, she'll pay." The threat passed over most ears, but not Nia's. She heard it, and she never forgot it. By noon, the media was on fire, and by evening, Nia was sitting across from a new lawyer, one who smiled softly at her and said, "You're going home soon." When Nia walked out of the courthouse, reporters swarmed her, but she ignored them all, because standing just outside the gates was her mother. Adana ran to her, tears streaming, arms wide. They collapsed into each other, sobbing, trembling. No words. None were needed, just two souls that had crawled through hell and found each other still breathing. A week later, Nia was invited back to the office of Remy's lawyer. She sat nervously, unsure what to expect. "You've been through more than most ever will," the lawyer said gently, sliding a folder across the table. "But Chief Remy saw something in you. He left you everything." Nia's eyes widened. "You are now the legal owner of his home and his business." Adana gasped, and as Nia reached out to take the documents, something happened. A whisper left her lips, a whisper that hadn't existed for 16 years. "Thank you." The lawyer froze. Adana's mouth fell open. Nia covered her mouth, stunned. "Thank you," she whispered again, tears flooding her eyes. Her voice had returned. Adana couldn't sleep the night Nia spoke. She sat beside her daughter, watching her sleep, her chest rising and falling, her lips slightly parted, as though afraid the words might vanish again. But they didn't. By morning, Nia was whispering softly, then humming, then laughing. It was like someone had turned the volume up on life. The girl, who had known only silence now, couldn't stop speaking in soft, melodic tones. "I don't know how it happened," she told her mother, her voice raw but real. Adana clutched her. "Maybe your soul just decided it was time." Nia didn't rush into her inheritance. She took her time, working with a legal advisor to transition smoothly into ownership of Remy's company, a mid-sized manufacturing firm with deep community ties. The board was skeptical at first, a teenage girl with no business background. But when Nia showed up at the first board meeting, poised, sharp, and with her new lawyer beside her, skepticism turned to surprise, and then to admiration. She didn't try to overhaul everything. She listened, took notes, and within months restructured one department, doubled its output, and restored a failing supplier relationship that had been neglected for years. Employees started calling her Miss Nia with pride. Adana too began to heal. She moved with Nia into Remy's mansion, a home built with the same wood and dreams she had once shared with Malik, but now filled with different air. Air not of pain, but peace. She took a job managing the mansion's affairs, small touches like flowers, curtains, recipes. It was a quiet way to reclaim control over her life. One morning, she stood on the balcony and whispered, "Thank you," to no one in particular. Then she smiled. But the past, it never stays buried. One evening, as Nia returned from a company event, she found a man standing by the gate, old, weathered, hunched. It was Malik, her father. His eyes were sunken, his shirt torn, and his hands trembled as he held his cap in front of him. He didn't recognize the sleek car or the marble steps or the staff, who stood around respectfully. But when Nia stepped out, his breath caught. "Nia," he rasped. She froze. Adana emerged from the house seconds later, her eyes locked on the man who had broken her spirit. He stepped forward. I'm dying," he said. Silence. "I was wrong," he added. "I lost everything. The other woman left me. The workshop burned down. I've got nothing. Just memories, bad ones." He looked at Nia with watery eyes. "I don't deserve forgiveness. I just wanted to see her before I go." Nia stared at him for a long time. The man who had called her a curse, who had thrown them to the wolves, now looked like a ghost of himself. She didn't speak. She didn't cry. She simply nodded at a staff member. "Give him food and water. Let him rest in the visitor's room." Adana looked at her, shocked. You want him to stay?" "Just for tonight," Nia said softly. "He's still my story." Malik left the next morning. No shouting, no redemption arc. Just a broken man who got to see the daughter he abandoned rise beyond him. He didn't ask for money. He didn't get closure, just food, water, and the silent mercy of the child he once cursed. Nia grew into a force. By the time she turned 23, she had taken Remy's business into 3 new regions, hired over 150 new staff, created apprenticeship programs for teenagers, especially those who were disabled or from broken homes, not because she owed the world anything, but because she had once stood outside restaurants, begging with her hands. One day, a journalist asked her, "What's the one thing you wish people knew about you?" Nia paused, then smiled. "I was never broken, just quiet." 5 years later, Nia had grown into herself. She was now a powerful, respected woman in business circles. Her face graced magazine covers. She had expanded Remy's company into 3 countries. She was still quiet, but not silent. She spoke with intention now, and when she did, people listened. Adana had become her closest advisor, her anchor, her home. But something happened one Tuesday morning that would shake everything. Nia's head of security walked in, pale-faced, holding a news clipping. "Ma'am, we just got confirmation." He placed it on her desk. It was a photo from a prison transport vehicle that had crashed outside the state border. 8 injured, 2 dead, 1 missing. Sadiq. He had escaped. Within hours, Nia's estate went into full lockdown. Security cameras checked. Routes tightened. Staff briefed. But Adana knew locks wouldn't stop him. He wouldn't attack with fists. He'd use shadows, secrets, manipulation. And he'd start by trying to ruin everything Nia had built. 3 days later, a viral post appeared on social media. "She stole it all. The real daughter is dead. Nia is a fraud. Ask about the poison." It spread like wildfire. Blogs reposted it. Gossip sites picked it up. Nia's inbox was flooded. Staff began questioning. Partners called to clarify a few concerns. The world Nia had built, once with her hands, then with her voice, began to tremble. And in the background, Sadiq watched from an internet cafe in another city, smiling. But he had made one mistake. He had underestimated the woman she had become. Nia held a press conference the next morning, one that would become legendary. She stood at a podium with only one line on the backdrop. "I never spoke, but I always saw." She laid it bare. Her journey, the abuse, the silence, the setup, the prison, the lies, and how Sadiq had returned to destroy her again because she survived what was meant to bury her. Then she pulled out the recording, the original audio from Lena, and played it publicly. Live. For the world to hear. By evening, police had tracked Sadiq's digital trail. He was found in a motel halfway across the country, with forged documents, a stolen laptop, and a journal filled with sketches of Nia, obsession. He was returned to prison immediately, this time to solitary confinement. No parole, no visitors, and no more shadows to hide behind. Nia didn't celebrate. She didn't gloat. She simply walked into her office the next morning, opened her laptop, and went back to work. Because survival wasn't her victory. Rebuilding was. Dear viewers, if this story touched you, drop a comment below, like and follow for more.